Right, time now for me to indulge and share my passion for visiting museums and private collections and show you what I think are three very interesting bikes that span just about the entire history of motorcycling. After attending the launch of BMW's R18 Bagger in Frankfurt for last week's episode, I find myself in Nuremberg, a city in northern Bavaria that houses the Museum of Industrial Culture, a place that I just couldn't resist visiting. Luckily, they had a few bikes on display, and on the back of Don testing the GS this week, there's no way I was going to ignore this GS that was tucked away in a corner, almost apologetically. BMW's first GS dates back to 1980, but this model from 1977 is also German and is also a GS with the ability to handle on and off-road riding duties. It's from a manufacturer called Hercules that started with motorbikes in 1904, but had already been making bicycles since 1886. This model is known as the W2000 and it has a 294cc Wankel air-cooled rotary engine that could produce up to 32 horsepower. It might be a 50-year-old design, but I think it might give BMW's current G310 GS a run for its money. Okay, staying very loosely with the GS theme, here's an example of a bike that used the boxer engine format in a longitudinal layout as opposed to the more familiar transversal approach that we're so used to seeing these days. I have to say that I hadn't realised how popular the boxer engine was in the German motorcycle industry back in the day, that day being pre-Second World War. Everybody seemed to be using it because of the design's inherent balance and the fact that it helped significantly lower a bike's centre of gravity and so improve its handling. Mars was another manufacturer from Nuremberg that had been making bicycles since 1878 and motorbikes since 1903. Nuremberg at the time was to motorcycling a bit like Silicon Valley is now to tech companies. They all concentrate their production in the one relatively small geographical area. This Mars A20 became known as the White Mars, even though actually there was also green and red versions, and it has become an extremely sought after and hence very expensive classic bike. This particular one will be 100 years old next year, and it features a box section frame that directly connects the rear wheel and the headstock and also houses the transmission and the drivetrain. The boxer engine that was made by aircraft manufacturer Maybach sits in a subframe and, as you can see, is in line with the frame. That meant the rear cylinder often overheated, so some ducting and a fan was used to direct more air at the rear cylinder to make up for its lack of direct air cooling. It's a lovely thing, I think you'll agree, but not quite as desirable as this next bike that, as far as I can tell, is the only one ever made. It doesn't even have an official model name, so it's simply displayed as a motorcycle from 1895, which makes it a rather impressive 126 years old. What looks like some kind of Art Deco scooter fairing is in fact the water cooling system for the single-cylinder four-stroke engine. Not vulnerable at all in the case of even a minor fall. That wasn't the only engineering drawback to this early attempt at a powered two-wheeler, because if you think about these early days of the development of the internal combustion engine, then obviously reliability was an issue. Given that, what you really need is a motor that can be easily accessed so you can fiddle and repair easily, replace the piston that's fallen out, tighten the bolts holding the head on, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, this was covered by an early, perhaps the earliest example of a full fairing that in this case comprised riveted sheet metal with just a couple of very small service doors for you to get into the workings of the thing. The curators at the museum don't think it ever travelled very far because of these difficulties, something they deduce from the complete lack of wear on the sturdy but largely unmarked gears that provide the final drive. I don't care though. I think it's beautiful. It's testament to the ingenuity of the adventurous engineer all those years ago, Franz Aufschlager, who created it. And to be honest, I've never seen a bike in a museum that I've ever coveted quite so much. And on that note of engineering awe and appreciation, I'm going to have to end the show this week and ask you to join us again in a week's time when we'll be doing, I don't know, something with motorbikes, I would have thought. See you then.